Hey, and welcome to the gathering. My name is Tyler, and I'm the Connections Pastor here at the Exchange. I know it's November, but I'd also like to say, welcome to 2020. I mean, this has been a wild and unexpected year, hasn't it? I'm sure many of you probably expected to experience this gathering at the Exchange building, but that didn't go as planned. I expected our lead pastor, Bryant, to be preaching this week, but he tested positive for COVID, so that didn't go as planned either. And just so you know, he and his family are doing all right, but I offered to hop in and teach today so he could continue to recover. I'm expecting to make it through this recording without hearing all the construction noise from my neighbor's house, but we'll see how that goes. But here's one we can all probably relate to. None of us thought it was going to be socially acceptable to walk into a bank wearing a mask, but here we are. 2020, it has been a year. It's been a year of unmet expectations and things we never expected to happen. But here's the good news. Jesus hasn't been surprised by a single thing that has happened, and he knows exactly what's going to happen next as well. So don't let 2020 be such a cuss word that you start to doubt if Jesus really is in control. Today we're going to continue walking our way through 1 John 3 in our reflection series. In keeping with things that are unexpected, in 1 John 3 verses 7 to 10, John is addressing lies about Jesus. And I got to be honest, I never expect to hear somebody tell a lie about Jesus. That just seems like something that should never happen, but it does. And so John answers a question here. He answers, how do I avoid the lies and follow the truth? You know, that's a good question to have the answer to. So we're going to look at it, and we're going to look at that answer in three parts. But before we break it down, let's take and read our passage today. So it's in 1 John, it's chapter 3, and it's verses 7 through 10. It says, "Little children, let no one deceive you. The one who does what is right is righteous, just as Jesus is righteous. The one who commits sin is of the devil, for the devil has sinned from the beginning. The Son of God was revealed for this purpose, to destroy the devil's works. Everyone who has been born of God does not sin, because his seed, Jesus' seed, remains in them. He is not able to sin, because he has been born of God. This is how God's children and the devil's children become obvious. Whoever does not do what is right is not of God, especially the one who does not have love for his brother or his sister." You know, one of the positive things I think 2020 has given us is an awareness of just how often people talk without actually having anything to say. And you know, I don't have any specific person in mind or anything. I'm just more thinking about social media feeds and the news cycle as a whole. It feels like everyone is quick to speak about their opinions, but very few people have real facts. And I think in the midst of that is a real desire to have some kind of control in a year that has felt so out of control. I don't think many of those people were trying to lie or be malicious. But you know, verse 7 right here, it warns us about those people who do want to deceive us. I mean, take Eve in the Garden of Eden, for example. She's got some facts. But remember, Satan, it literally said it right here, has been lying since the beginning. You know, she's got the fact that God said, don't eat from this one tree in the garden. But the snake rolls up and he begins to tell lies on purpose. He begins to deceive Eve with statements that they sound pretty good. They sound like facts, even though they aren't. That's what the enemy still does to you and to me. He shares lies that sound good, that sound like facts, but aren't. He tells us that it makes sense to live together before getting married so you can make sure you two are a fit. He tells us that a little debt to buy that new shiny thing is totally worth it because, man, you've worked hard and you deserve it. He tells us that the promotion is worth missing out on our kids' ball game. And it's worth missing the family dinner because we'll be able to provide so much more in the future. The enemy tells us a lot of things that sound good. But are they true? How do we know that the voice that we're listening to is the right voice to listen to when everywhere we go, everyone is shouting what they claim to be true? Let's look at 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 11 and 12. Then he said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the Lord's presence." At that moment, the Lord passed by, and there was a great and mighty wind, and it was tearing down the mountains, and it was shattering the cliffs before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, there was a great fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, there was a voice, a soft whisper. Where was God? He wasn't in the mighty wind. He wasn't in the earthquake. He wasn't in the fire. He was in the soft whisper. You see, to know the truth, we have to reject the noise, and we've got to listen intently. We have to reject the noise and listen intently to know the truth. Because God rarely shouts through the social feeds or through the news cycle. He rarely shouts through that angry guy you know. He usually whispers. And He wants us to wait patiently and listen intently for when He speaks. Are any of you gardeners? If you are a gardener, you got a green thumb, I want you to drop a little hands up emoji in the chat for me so that I know who I can call anytime I need some pretty flowers or some tasty veggies. Now, me personally, I don't have a green thumb, but my wife loves to have plants around the house. You can see a few behind me here. And actually this one on the shelf right here, it's been hanging out with us for at least 2 years now. It actually started out in one pot. I don't know if it was this pot, but it was one pot. And because it's done so well, it's now been broken up and planted into at least 4 different pots. Now, it doesn't grow fruit, it doesn't grow flowers, it just grows these long green vines here. I don't even know what the thing is called, to be honest, but I know what it does because I've watched it grow for years now. So if I ever walk in here and I find this thing growing oranges, I'm going to lose my mind a little bit because it's not an orange tree. It should not be growing oranges. Verse 9 in 1 John 3, it says to us, "Everyone who has been born of God does not sin because God's seed remains in that person." Christians aren't trees, but they do grow fruit. They grow the fruit of the Spirit. I know you're at home, but say this with me if you know it. The fruit of the Spirit, it's Galatians 5:22 and 23, said the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Now, if you don't consistently see the fruits of the Spirit and the source of a statement, it doesn't make what they said automatically a lie, but you should be mindful of whether or not it is Jesus-centered truth. But focusing on another person isn't what the fruit is about. It's not what the fruit of the Spirit is about. See, the fruit of the Spirit helps us know what kind of plant we are. When we think about ourselves, do we consistently show the same characteristics as the Spirit of God? Do we consistently treat others in a loving way? Do we respond with joy? Do we have peace when the unexpected year of 2020 happens? Can we be patient with others? Are we kind, or do we display goodness? Are we faithful with our actions and our thoughts? Have we been gentle? And do we show self-control? What's your fruit? Think of it like a pot full of dirt. You don't know what's been planted in that dirt until it starts to grow and to ripen. So stick with the plant metaphor with me. We've got to learn to ripen what's been planted in our life by the Spirit of God. We have to learn how to ripen what's been planted in our life by the Spirit of God so that we'll know we are following the truth of God and not the lies of the enemy. Or in other words, you need to test yourself and others against the fruit of the Spirit. No one's always going to live it out. That's where trusting God's grace comes in. But if the fruits of the Spirit are not regularly a part of you, you need to be mindful of what kind of plant you really are. John says it's those who do what is right and love their fellow believers. They're God's family and his people. See, this verse is a clear statement on why we called the series in 1 John 3 Reflections. John knows that anybody who is a follower of Jesus is going to reflect his actions. You won't know if every statement you are told is true or not, but you can know whether or not someone reflects Jesus. You can tell. Think about the way Jesus lived. He spent time with people who we would say clearly aren't following God, like thieves and sex workers. Why did he spend time with them? To lovingly share the truth of God's kingdom without condemning them. He gave food and resources to homeless people and people in need without shaming them for how they ended up in their current financial situation. And he gave sacrificially of his own life for a people who didn't know him, to provide a way for them to become part of his family. And he did not ask them to repay that debt. So whether we can tell if someone else is lying to us about what's true or not, when we reflect what Jesus has shown, we can be confident that we are living out the truth. The kind of truth we find in Mark 12, when Jesus spoke and he said, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength." And to secondly, love your neighbor as yourself. So how are you and I doing at reflecting Jesus' sacrificial love? 2020 has been a wild year. It's come with a lot of broken expectations and a lot of unexpected challenges. 2020 has probably brought some disappointments for you. But 2020 doesn't have to be a bad year. This could be the year that you finally decide to join Jesus' family. This could be the year you finally decide to not just believe that Jesus is God, but to surrender and follow him even when it's difficult. 2020 could be the year you learn to reject all the noise and to listen intently for God's voice. It could be the year you learn to trust the Holy Spirit within you and to live out his characteristics. 2020 could be the year you stop living for yourself and start living sacrificially by reflecting Jesus. If that's you, if you're ready to have that conversation about what it really means to reflect Jesus, to live for Jesus, to surrender everything and go, "Jesus, I am here for you," or maybe you've made that decision and you just want to talk to somebody about it, you can text your name to 601-397-6111 to get that conversation started.